Has the Russian submarine threat been diminished by the Ukraine war? Head of the U.S. Northern Command recently told senators that Russia could have its most powerful Yasen-class attack submarines on persistent patrols off either of America's coasts within 2 years, which will reduce decision space for a national senior leader in a time of crisis. Here we look at these boats and the wider Russian submarine threat that is equally applicable to the UK and Europe. The broad consensus in the West is that the war in Ukraine has proven the once much-feared Russian armed forces to be hollowed out, poorly equipped and badly led. The heavy losses of Russian army soldiers and armor, accompanied by the mediocre performance of the Air Force, is a matter of record. The sinking of the ancient cruiser Moskva and the poor performance of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea would appear to indicate a much diminished threat across the full spectrum of non-nuclear capabilities. If the Russian surface fleet is predominantly obsolete and its few modern combatants are of frigate size and below, their submarine forces pose a potentially much more serious challenge. The extent of this threat is difficult to fully quantify, as real analysis does not involve just counting platform numbers, but is a much more complex assessment of readiness, material state, weapon capability and crew training and competence. Some may argue that it is in the interests of Western navies and their industrial suppliers for senior uniformed personnel to overstate the threat. What can be said with certainty is that Russian submarine activity had been rising significantly in the decade before the Ukraine war. The VMF has been slowly taking delivery of submarines almost on a par with Western equivalents, and the Severodvinsk class are the finest boats SSN SSGNS they have ever possessed. The Russian Northern Fleet remains the significant focus of interest for the RN. Their on-paper order of battle in 2023 is 7 XSSBNs, 9 XSSNs, 5 XSSGNS, 6 XSSKs, and a number of special-purpose boats. However, determining their precise availability remains challenging, although estimates suggest that approximately 25–30% of the fleet may be deployed at any given time. This would suggest that of the SSNs and SSGNS, which comprise the primary conventional threat, between 3–5 boats are typically at sea. The number of boats available to the VMF is nowhere near that of the Soviet heyday, so lacking numerical advantage, the Russians now have little choice but to strive for qualitative parity. This has been attempted with some success through weapon and sensor development, together with great effort to match the noise reduction features of Western designs. At the tail end of the Cold War, the appearance of the quiet Victor III class SSNs finally began to challenge NATO's assumption they would have the upper hand over noisy Soviet boats. Aided by underwater fixed sonar arrays of the SOSUS network, it had usually been possible to determine approximate Russian submarine dispositions, even if it required other naval assets to localize and shadow them.